Some of this... Oh! Hi, I'm the Moss Man, and in today's video, we'll be discussing how to grow a cactus. Well, you may have guessed that from the title of the video, but I'm going to go over these factors to growing a cactus. There will be a playlist to the plant care essentials in the card. So first of all, let's go over the kinds of cacti, or the kinds of cactuses that I have here. Now, none of them came labeled, they all came with this label right here, which just says cactus, which leaves me not knowing what's what. So I'm gonna look them up, and in post, I'll put the names of the cactus over, or the names of the cactus that I think these are, over the video right now. The most common thing that leads to the death of a cactus is overwatering. I will talk about that when we get to the watering section. But what kind of ties into that is the soil that you use. So for a cactus, we want to have a really well draining soil or substrate. So you'll notice though that none of these cactuses here are in sand, which think cactus, you think desert, you think sand. And the larger one I had growing was not in sand either. They're all in soil. That's fine. You can use soil, but make sure you use the right kind of soil. So you want, like I said, well-draining substrate. Even more so than you would for any other kind of plant. So if you have, if you're using cactus mix, pre-mixed soil, perfect. If you're using a soil that has a lot of peat moss in it, or stuff like that, it's going to absorb and hold the water there longer. So you don't want that. You want less peat, you want more perlite and gravel and whatever else, right? If it says cactus mix, good, that's good enough. Or should you use an entirely sand substrate? I don't think so. I think that in this case, if you want the most cactus growth you can get, you don't want to just use like sand or gravel. You want to use something that will hold in not only the moisture, but also the nutrients that your cactus needs to grow. So if you have sand, your water is going to run right through, which is good, great drainage. But so are the nutrients on the sand that are around the sand. The water just takes it all away, right? So even if you have maybe a nutrient-rich water coming through, that water and all that stuff is just going straight through the sand, and you're not leaving very much nutrients for the cactuses to play with. So you want kind of a balance. You want well draining, and you still want something that can hold some nutrients there. As per usual, I'm going to be using a combination of perlite, some of this pumice here, basically gravel, but it's very porous. And then this, which I used in my last video, which is a seeding and rooting mix, just because I don't have a good just base soil on me at the moment. Often I will also add stuff like peat moss, but like I said before, water retention is not ideal for this setup. I'll also be using some larger chunks of pumice, but those three components I listed before are the main pieces of this soil composition. Right, talking about fertilization. Now this section is very simple. Well, maybe let's not say very simple, but this section is relatively simple, okay? So you have a cactus. The soil, if it's in soil, that soil starts with some nutrients in it that the cactus can use and the cactus will grow with. As long as you're repotting the cactus every so often, that soil will retain enough nutrients to keep the cactus growing, as long as you're replacing the soil. But for a little boost in cactus growth, you're going to want to use something like this. Okay, this is a liquid fertilizer, and basically what you do is you take this in the proportion that it tells you to, mix it with water, And then when you water your cactus, you're also giving it nutrients. So maybe every time, don't give it fertilizer maybe every time you water, but every second time, or if it's in the winter, maybe don't fertilize it at all, just because it's not going to be growing enough to be using up those nutrients. You don't have to worry about like, oh, I accidentally gave it fertilizer two weeks in a row, the cactus is done for. No, I'm just saying, like, as a general rule, once on, once off is probably good. So now that I've related 2 different cactus care elements to water, let's talk about how you should be watering your cactuses. So as a general rule, for all plants, don't make a watering schedule. Water the plant when it needs water. And I know schedules can be helpful, but it's a living and an adapting thing, right? So for your care to be most effective, you need to adapt your care to how the plant is doing. For a cactus though, like I said, probably at the beginning section of the video, they thrive off of neglect. So if you forget this cactus for, like, you don't water it for 2 months, sure, that's not great, that's not conducive to good growth, but it's unlikely that you're going to be harming the cactus too much by doing that. Now, if that happens a lot, if that happens all the time, then you might have some issues, but here and there, like, oh, I didn't do this, whatever. It all depends, right? It's all relative. If your cactus is growing a lot, often this is in like spring, summer, cactus is growing well, it's going to be using more water, therefore you can water and fertilize it more. The thing with a cactus is when you're watering it, you want it to get dry, like dry before you water it. Like these ones here, all of them, they are bone dry. Like this soil is crispy, okay? Now, maybe that's a little overkill, but you should wait until all the soil is dry before you water it again. And when you do water it, it's not like 2 drops in or something like that, or like a cup of water. You want to thoroughly soak the soil. But make sure, again, if your soil leans more towards the absorbent and water retentive kind of soil, you want to not go overboard with soaking your cactus, right? Unfortunately, like I said earlier, the main cause of cactus death is actually overwatering. I'm going to talk about lighting now. So with the setup I have here, you can see, or well, you can't see right now, but I have a very bright light here, a full spectrum LED, which I use for all of my plants, basically. I'll link to some of the lights that I use in the description. Oh, and now that I think of it, the fertilizer as well, I'll link in the description. Getting something like this is great if your window doesn't get enough light, or if you have your cactus in a room or place that doesn't get any light. Taking care of plants is always about thinking, where did these plants come from? To adapt to the circumstances, the conditions of those areas. How can I replicate the conditions of those areas? Lighting is important. And that's important in conjunction with watering. For all plants, lighting is kind of the for example, if you're a college student during midterms who manages to eat well, eat healthily, who gets enough to drink and eat, and is doing very well in all their courses and understands all the information in all the courses, but doesn't sleep for a week before the exam. Now, they may be set up for success with the first 3 things, but they haven't slept. They don't have the energy. So they get to the exam and they pass out. I took way too long trying to make that analogy work on the spot. So hopefully I cut that down. Same thing goes for all your plants. But when talking about cactuses specifically, if they don't have enough light, they're not going to grow very fast. So they're not going to... So you can water them a bunch. You can give them the perfect amount of fertilizer, soil conditions are perfect, but if they don't have enough light, they aren't going to be able to use any of those things because they don't have energy to grow. So your cactus is just going to rot, probably. I mean, if it's not growing, it's not using the water, it'll just rot. The water will sit there and it'll rot. You should have, for a cactus, anywhere from you can give them some direct sunlight during some direct and indirect sunlight during the day. You could have bright indirect sunlight for most of the day. It's possible that your cactus will do well on low light. What you have to consider is in each of these circumstances, your cactus is going to be growing at a different rate. So you need to be able to balance the other factors, water and fertilizer and the soil conditions, to match the lighting that you're giving these plants. So in the low light environment, it's not going to be using water quickly at all for any part of the year, which means you need an even better draining soil, and you need to water it very rarely, because it's not going to be using it. If it's getting the right amount of sun, if it's growing all the time, all year round, you're artificially supplementing your sunlight, you're good to go, it's growing, you're going to need to use more water. Thank you for watching. As always, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment with your favorite kind of cactus. And thank you to Dylan and Elijah for providing the music. That's all for today. See you in the next one.